We're back now with Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan. Thanks for joining us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Speaker Mike Johnson was mostly unknown until he emerged as the GOP Speaker nominee. Right now, how are Democrats reacting to his elevation to one of the most powerful lawmakers in Washington?
Well, it's been a chaotic session, much less the last 3 weeks with no speaker. So we're just glad to get back to hopefully normal. However, the first indications are we're going to take up multiple censure resolutions, maybe the very first night we're back next week. We're going to keep marking up appropriation bills in a way that's not real. It's what I call fantasy Congress. It's kind of like fantasy football. It's not real. People play it. But we're still not getting to the heart of what we need to. We have a farm bill that if it isn't done by the end of the year, milk prices are going to skyrocket, really hurting dairy farmers here in Wisconsin and across the country. There's a lot of things we really have to get done, and we're just not quite moving there. So I hope to learn more about him than some of the things that are actually pretty troubling that we've heard so far. But I'm hoping just that we can turn a page and start Congress maybe a bit anew rather than what it looks like we're going to do the very next week I'm back.
So Johnson was someone back in 2020, 2021 who did take the lead on getting House Republicans to sign on to a legal brief as part of a lawsuit that attempted to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Is that something right now that is troubling Democrats as we look ahead to 2024, as Johnson has been kind of elevated to this very visible role?
Yeah, that and other things. It's certainly intellectually dishonest to say that the election wasn't decided. And I think, most rational members of Congress privately will certainly tell you that. But the fact that he was one of the architects of that shows that there may be some ethical issues we're going to be dealing with. Also, he used to represent one of the most anti LGBTQI plus groups in the nation, arguing for the criminalization of homosexuality. He's for a full abortion ban with no exceptions. He's got a lot of positions that are really quite extreme. And having someone in that position, we hope that he realizes when you're the Speaker of the House, technically you're the Speaker of the House of Representatives. That includes Democrats and Republicans. You're not a speaker just for a single political party. And I'm hoping that maybe he can rise above some of his past actions.
How can Johnson work with Democrats going forward?
One, reach out to us, ask for votes. One of the problems Kevin McCarthy did beginning of the session was that he made a deal with the more conservative elements in his caucus to never get Democratic votes, that they have to do things only with Republican votes. That's really difficult. As we've seen this session, we've gotten very little done because of it. And we have important things like the Farm Bill and other things to get done. So really just realizing that, they only have a 5-seat majority. We have to get things done by working together. And, we have always suggested in the last 4 weeks when we didn't have a speaker, or 3 weeks, that there's a bipartisan path forward. We can work together and have some kind of shared governance. I hope that he will look at that as a possible path forward.
Minnesota Democratic Representative Dean Phillips has now announced to run for president in 2024, kicking off a long shot primary challenge to President Joe Biden. How do you think this affects or could affect your party's ability to win the White House in 2024?
Yeah, I remember, I think the last time weren't there like 18 Democrats running in the primary, and I probably couldn't name half of them anymore. I don't think Dean Phillips is going to mount a real challenge that will contest the president. Joe Biden's done more than any president in my adult lifetime in getting money for infrastructure and lowering the price for things like insulin, allowing us to now negotiate for drug prices to save Americans money. He's done a whole lot of things. I think their biggest challenge is just, this is a very divided nation, especially with Donald Trump likely being the nominee. But I don't think anyone in the primary is going to lift a real challenge to the president.
Are you concerned that a Phillips run would be a distraction or highlight any weaknesses in President Biden that could give the GOP an edge?
Yeah, I just don't see him taking off, period. So I don't think it'll be a significant challenge.
This week, authorities say a man in Lewiston, Maine killed at least 16 people and wounded more than a dozen others in a shooting rampage. Absolutely devastating, very tragic. And this attack, of course, once again brings gun legislation conversations to the forefront. Congressman, which particular gun laws can make a difference at this point? And how can Democrats get Republicans on board? Is that possible?
I mean, you'd think after massacre, after killing, after involvement like this in everyone's district across the country, it would have moved the needle more, and it hasn't. I go back to Washington, and we'll have a moment of silence, and we don't have any moments of action. We got a few bills done when the Democrats were in charge last session, but I think an assault weapon ban we used to have in this country. I think it served us well. We should do that. All these killings constantly are happening in that way. I think we should have background checks for everyone, not just when you go to a gun shop. They have to follow the law, but if you buy a gun off of someone on Craigslist, you can meet someone in a parking lot with a bag of cash. There's no background check there. There are other measures I think that we can do like that are just kind of common sense measures, some of which have like 85% support in the public, and yet Congress can't get them done. I think we have to quit listening to the NRA lobby and start listening to our constituents.
Is there a path forward on any of this for compromise with Republicans in your view?
You would hope so, but so far the new speaker's comments to the tragedy was for thoughts and prayers. And unfortunately, thoughts and prayers aren't going to stop shootings, and they're not going to bring anyone back to life. We need to actually do what Congress is supposed to do, pass legislation. And I'm hopeful that people will start seeing the light. Look, let's face it, there's a Democrat from Maine that didn't believe in an assault weapon ban. And after this happened in his state, he said, I was wrong. And it takes a lot to say that, but we need more people doing the right thing and standing up to the gun lobby in DC.
And how do you see, moving on, I'd like to talk a little bit about the president's aid package. Right now, there isn't a lot of support among Republicans for funding for Ukraine. How do you see this package going forward? Do you think this is something that's going to get cut up into smaller bills, or do you see any consensus on that larger spending bill?
So I believe the Senate's taking it up first, so we'll probably take it up in the form they send us. But I can tell you, when the new speaker was elected, Hakeem Jeffries spoke right before him to give him the gavel. When he talked about support for Ukraine is something we need to do, I saw at least half of the Republicans stand up and applaud. So I think there are some extremists, again, not the mainstream position, even in the Republican Party, is not to support Ukraine. I think still the mainstream position is to provide support. The question is, because of how the Republican caucus operates, especially with that tail wagging the dog that we've seen all session, that could be the real problem that Speaker Johnson might have. I'm hoping it won't be. We need to continue that support, but I'm done predicting the Republicans in the House of Representatives these days.
Congressman Mark Pocan, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you.